the copyright owners of a song, can I have the right to play, whatever ragtime song? And then you negotiate it. Congress steps in and basically creates a statutory rate that allows, well, now it's 9 cents per song per copy that you make. But the point is you don't have to ask permission. As long as you have the money to do it, and that's a big factor, obviously, but as long as you have the money to pay to put that stuff out, you don't have to, subject yourself to a censor. The same isn't true with sampling. Just to give you a really quick example with the group Public Enemy that they referred to. Public Enemy was basically turned sampling into an art form because they literally would take 20, 30 song fragments or sound fragments and create a new composition. And that's very different than what you were talking about with basically jacking a whole hook of a chorus, which is what most people in the mainstream associate with sampling. It's not that creative. It's just taking like an old 80s song and dropping it into your new song. And basically, in terms of, the copyright system has created a kind of class system where you're either rich enough to be able to afford to take that hook, like if you're Kanye West or Will Smith or whatever, or you're like, my colleagues over here who don't have what can be sometimes $50,000 to take a hook. And so getting back to Public Enemy had to stop making these really, really interesting sound collages because the law, unfortunately, doesn't treat, as Kent said, the law doesn't treat any differently a one-note beep like that and an entire chorus. And so Chuck D from Public Enemy once sort of broke this down most simply for me, which is, it would cost us 30 times the amount of what Puff Daddy pays to do something that's not that interesting. And it basically, in other words, it kind of shut down a whole art form, or at least it drove it underground. It made it so that a lot of people who depend on mainstream radio to listen for the songs that they consume, it made it impossible for these people to be exposed to, a variety of different kinds of sounds in hip-hop. And so it really comes down to, I think we all were sort of touching on this issue of how money is involved as a gatekeeper that determines who gets to speak and who doesn't. And speaking of who gets to speak and who doesn't, I wanted to stop now so that we all could engage in a dialogue.
I'm going to open up for questions now, and unfortunately, I don't have a microphone to hand you, so, okay. Is this working? No. Hello? No. Okay. That's fine. I see a hand back there. Go ahead.
The kind of music you're talking about and the radio broadcasting you're talking about has always been outlawed. And then when the system finally absorbs it, becomes so boring, it's not like worth listening to. Because look what happened to WSUI. So, you're pioneers. You finally found your age. We had Vietnam and civil rights. Now you got yours.
That's really the interesting area of music. For instance, this guy in Detroit, Moody Man, nearly everyone, basically his whole recorded catalog is creative rearrangement of jazz and soul records. Like you can go online and find a list of everything he sampled. And they don't come after him just because he's underground, but he's not even in that underground. He's like, the top of the front page news when he plays in Tokyo. So, and DJ Shadow, like his whole first album, none of that stuff is cleared, and I don't know how he gets away with it because I'm old enough to know all the Stanley Clarke albums he jacked.
Could I borrow your laptop?
Here, let me get it out of my pocket.
Sorry. No, I was. It was actually just an aside. So I hate for you to go through all that trouble. I actually, I talked to someone at Shadow's record company, or his original record company. Basically, yeah, they put out that record. It's an amazing record. It's a kind of classic sample-based record where he's drawing from over 100 sources, clearly. And to give you a sense of how much it costs to clear samples, it's at the minimum, let's say about $5,000, and it can go up to $50,000 or even $100,000. If he were to play by the rules of the licensing system, that record never would have come out in the first place. But what he did was he just did it DIY. But when it was picked up by a major label, he was given a fairly healthy budget. I don't know the exact number, but he was given a healthy budget to sample, to clear samples. But it still wouldn't even remotely cover the cost of all that. And so basically what he did was he made an ethical choice. He went through his list of samples and decided, who do I feel like deserves this money, this little bits of money the most? And so there's a whole bunch of that record that's still uncleared, but that's how he made that choice.
So my question is about live performance. If you have a show and you DJ, you cover a song, DJ using records that you did not produce, you sing a song that you cover, you do a little dance, you have Michael Jackson in the background. You don't record it, but you do charge for tickets. What are the legalities of that?
Well, basically, ASCAP and BMI, which are the primary companies, and CSAC, the three companies that essentially collect royalties for radio airplay and also live concert venues. They'll, if you're above the radar enough, they'll come after you and they'll demand from your community space or whatever the blanket license. And like I said earlier, it's a sliding scale, so it can, I don't know, be as low as $500, but much more.
On that note, they just yesterday they announced that they were suing Pianos in New York, was a prominent live music venue, and I don't know if they just weren't licensed at all or if somehow they were having things they weren't licensed for. But you know, what it comes down to is it's a collision of art with capitalism, because if you've got money and you have, quote, your software like Sony or BMG or any of these companies, you know, you want to preserve your right to exclusively control that. And, you know, anytime you look at capitalism, the three things that drive it are greed, ignorance, and fear, and that all comes into play in this situation.
I have a question for everyone on the panel. I'm wondering, when you're in our community of Iowa City, what is the sort of feedback that you get from other artists or DJs? What do they think of the sorts of activities that you do? Do you find that the community is supportive, or do you come into contact with a lot of artists who are more advocating for copyright and protection of their music? What do you feel is the climate in our community?
On the level I work, I mostly am met with blind indifference. So it's hard to say. The people that I know and who are working on stuff completely are existing outside that system, and they're playing in warehouses, or sometimes they're playing in bars. But they don't. I have a handheld recorder that I bring and record live shows, and then put live shows by different bands on the internet, and they say, sure, yeah, record me, just send me a link to it, and whoever wants it can download it and listen to it. Now, if they are actually on a label and have a publishing deal with a publishing company and are registered with ASCAP or BMI, we're all basically breaking the law. They're breaking the law by saying it's okay to just give it away for free. So, you know, I've never encountered anyone that really thought twice about it on the level that we deal with. They are just pleased as punch anyone cares, which goes back to the blind indifference aspect of being an artist, is mostly no one pays attention.
I agree.
Well, we're kind of in the business of blind indifference at Radio Iowa City, which actually was something I had intended to bring up, but to an extent is because there is a certain freedom in not being able to tally who listens to your content and who doesn't. Even if you have a free podcast, you can tell how many listeners are downloading your program. and if you have an advertised radio